In a distant corner of the galaxy, where stars burned cold and planets drifted like forgotten relics, humanity had fallen far from its once glorious heights. The Krill Dominion, an alien empire with shimmering silver skin and eyes that glowed like molten gold, ruled over countless species with an iron grip. Humans, once proud explorers of the cosmos, were now nothing more than slaves, property to be bought, sold, and discarded at will. On Zorath Station, a massive orbital marketplace, suspended in the void between stars, the air buzzed with activity. Alien merchants shouted prices for exotic goods while robotic drones zipped through crowded corridors carrying crates of strange minerals and artifacts. In one corner of the station, a large auction hall stood filled with buyers eager to spend their credits on rare commodities. Today's main attraction wasn't a piece of advanced technology or a rare gemstone, it was a human. Jack Monroe stood on a raised platform at the center of the room, his hands bound behind his back by glowing energy cuffs. He wore tattered clothes, stained with dirt and sweat from months of captivity. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was something about him that set him apart. His piercing blue eyes scanned the crowd of aliens without fear, meeting each gaze with quiet defiance. Jack knew he was being watched not just as a prisoner but as a legend. Stories of his skill as a sniper had spread across the galaxy long before he was captured during a raid on Earth. The auctioneer, a tall insectoid creature with multiple arms and a voice like grinding metal, stepped forward to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," it announced in heavily accented basic English, the universal language of trade, "we have a truly unique offering today. This specimen is no ordinary human. He is Jack Monroe, known among his kind as the Ghost, a master marksman capable of hitting targets from impossible distances, perfect for hunting, security detail, or even personal entertainment." "Oh, aye," murmur rippled through the audience. Some leaned forward in their seats, intrigued by the prospect of owning such a skilled individual. Others whispered among themselves, speculating about how much this particular human might fetch. Jack ignored them all, focusing instead on controlling his breathing. He had learned early in his captivity that panic only made things worse. Survival required patience and timing. As bids began pouring in, Jack allowed himself a moment to reflect on how he had ended up here. Back on Earth, he had been part of an elite military unit tasked with defending humanity against alien threats. When the Krill first arrived, they didn't negotiate or offer terms, they simply attacked. Cities burned, families were torn apart, and survivors were rounded up like cattle. Jack had fought valiantly, taking down dozens of enemy soldiers with his rifle before finally being overwhelmed. Now, after months of brutal treatment aboard a Krill prison ship, he was reduced to standing on a stage like livestock. The bidding war continued, with numbers climbing higher and higher. Most of the bidders were minor nobles or wealthy merchants, looking to impress their peers. But then, a new voice cut through the chaos. 100,000 credits, said a deep, resonant tone that silenced the room. All heads turned toward the speaker, a towering Krail noble named Vorthak. His sleek black armor gleamed under the artificial lights, and his golden eyes seemed to glow brighter than anyone else's. Vorthak was infamous for his cruelty and ambition, ruling over several conquered worlds with ruthless efficiency. No one dared to outbid him. After a few tense moments, the auctioneer declared, "Sold to Lord Vorthak." The gavel struck the podium with a sharp crack, sealing Jack's fate. Vorthak approached the platform, studying Jack with clear satisfaction. "You will serve me well, human," he said in flawless basic English. "I have many enemies, and your skills will ensure my dominance remains unchallenged." Jack met his gaze without flinching, though inside, his mind raced. He knew what awaited him: endless missions designed to eliminate rivals, constant surveillance, and zero chance of escape. Yet despite everything, a small spark of determination flickered within him. If Vorthak thought he could break Jack Monroe, he was wrong. Elsewhere, hidden deep in the asteroid belt surrounding Zorath Station, a small rebel fleet monitored the events unfolding below. On board the Phoenix, a battered yet functional starship, Emily Dawson sat hunched over a console, watching live footage of the auction. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her sharp green eyes narrowed as she studied Jack's face on the screen. She had heard rumors of his capture months ago, but never imagined she would see him sold like chattel. "He's still alive," she muttered, partly to herself and partly to Alex Carter, the ship's pilot, who lounged nearby. "We can't let him rot in some krill dungeon." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about infiltrating Zorath Station, one of the most secure places in the sector, to rescue a single guy. That's suicide." Emily turned to face him, her expression firm. "He's not just any guy. He's Jack Monroe. If we pull this off, we'll have the best shot humanity's had in years at striking back against the krill." Sam Rodriguez, the ship's engineer, chimed in from across the room. "Even if we manage to get him out, what makes you think he'll join us? He's probably broken by now." Emily shook her head. "People like Jack don't break easily. Trust me, he'll fight back when the time comes. We just need to give him the opportunity." For the rest of the day, the crew debated the risks and rewards of attempting a rescue mission. While opinions varied, one thing was certain. Jack Monroe represented hope, a symbol of resistance against an empire that thrived on oppression. As the discussion drew to a close, Emily made her decision. Whether it cost her life or not, she would find a way to bring Jack back into the fight. Humanity's survival depended on it. Meanwhile, aboard Vorthak's private cruiser, Jack sat, alone in a dimly lit holding cell. The journey to Xylo 7, Vorthak's home planet, would take several days, giving him plenty of time to think. As the ship hummed softly around him, Jack closed his eyes and replayed every detail of the auction in his mind. He remembered the auctioneer's words, Vorthak's smug expression, and the fleeting glimpse of rebellion he'd seen in the eyes of another slave, a young woman with fiery red hair who had been sold shortly before him. Her name was Lily Bennett, and though their interaction had been brief, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their paths might cross again. For now, however, he focused on staying alive. Survival was step one. Revenge would come later. And so, as the cruiser sped toward its destination, Jack vowed silently to himself that he would not remain a pawn in Vorthak's game for long. Whatever happened next, he would find a way to turn the tables and make the krill regret the day they ever dared to enslave humanity. The crimson skies of Xylo 7 stretched endlessly above Jack Monroe as he stepped off the cruiser and onto the alien world. The air was thick with a metallic tang, and the ground beneath his boots shimmered faintly, as if coated in some kind of reflective dust. Towering spires made of black glass rose into the clouds, their jagged edges catching the light of the planet's twin suns. It was a place designed to intimidate, and it worked. Vorthak led Jack through the sprawling city toward his palace, a massive structure that loomed over everything else like a dark shadow. The streets were eerily quiet, except for the occasional patrol of krill soldiers marching in perfect formation. Their glowing eyes scanned the area, ever vigilant for signs of rebellion. Jack kept his head down, careful not to draw attention to himself. He knew better than to test his captors so soon after arriving. Inside the palace, Vorthak wasted no time putting Jack to work. The first day began with a brutal training session in a large arena surrounded by high walls. Kral, a hulking krill overseer with scars crisscrossing his silver skin, barked orders at Jack while other slaves looked on nervously. "You will prove your worth here," Kral growled, tossing Jack a rifle. "If you fail, there are always others who can take your place." Jack caught the weapon instinctively, his fingers wrapping around it like an old friend. Despite months of captivity, his hands still remembered how to hold a gun. The target, a small drone hovering 50 meters away, was child's play for someone of his skill level. He raised the rifle, took aim, and fired in one fluid motion. The shot hit its mark, sending the drone crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. Kral grunted in approval but quickly moved on to more challenging tasks. Over the next few days, Jack faced increasingly difficult tests, shooting moving targets, hitting multiple marks in rapid succession, and even firing blindfolded based on sound alone. Each challenge pushed him to his limits, but Jack endured, without complaint. He knew that survival depended on proving his value to Vorthak, and patience would be key. During these sessions, Jack noticed another slave watching him from the sidelines. Her name was Lily Bennett, the same fiery-haired woman he had seen briefly at the auction. She wore plain gray robes and carried a medical kit, tending to injured slaves after particularly grueling exercises. One evening, when the overseers weren't paying attention, she approached him cautiously. "You're Jack Monroe, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of machinery in the arena. Jack glanced at her briefly before returning his focus to cleaning his rifle. "What's it to you?" Lily hesitated, then knelt beside him. "I've heard stories about you, about what you did back on Earth. I know you're not just some ordinary soldier." Jack stopped what he was doing and met her gaze. There was something in her eyes, determination mixed with desperation, that reminded him of himself. "Stories don't mean much anymore," he said flatly. "We're all slaves here." "Not forever," Lily replied, her voice firmer now. "There's a resistance. Humans fighting back against the Krill. They call themselves the Phoenix. Maybe you've heard of them." Jack shook his head. He hadn't, but the idea intrigued him. For months, he'd assumed humanity was too broken to fight back. If there really was a chance to reclaim freedom, he wanted to believe it. Still, he couldn't afford to let his guard down. Not yet. "Even if they exist, what makes you think they'll come for us?" he asked. "They already tried," Lily admitted. "At least they tried to monitor the auction where you were sold. Someone named Emily Dawson is leading them. She thinks you could help turn the tide." The name meant nothing to Jack, but the thought of someone out there planning his rescue gave him a flicker of hope. He nodded slightly, signaling that he understood. Before either of them could say more, Krawl's voice boomed across the arena, ordering everyone back to their quarters. Lily hurried away, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. Back on the Phoenix, Emily Dawson and her crew were hard at work devising a plan to infiltrate Xylos 7. The challenge was immense. The planet's defenses were among the most advanced in the galaxy, with automated turrets guarding every approach and patrols scanning for unauthorized ships. But Emily refused to give up. She had seen the footage of Jack's performance during the auction, and knew that rescuing him wasn't just about saving one man. It was about giving humanity a fighter who could inspire others. "We'll need disguises," Alex Carter suggested, pointing to a holographic map of the palace displayed on the ship's main screen. "If we pose as traitors or diplomats, we might be able to get close enough to grab him." Sam Rodriguez frowned, tapping furiously at his console. "Even if we make it past the outer defenses, getting into the palace itself is going to be nearly impossible. That place is a fortress." Emily leaned forward, her green eyes blazing with determination. "Then we'll find a way. We'll use every trick in the book if we have to. Jack's skills are exactly what we need to weaken the Krill's grip on this sector. Without him, our chances of winning this war drop significantly." Over the next week, the crew prepared meticulously. They forged fake IDs, modified their ship to resemble a standard cargo vessel, and gathered intel on Vorthak's daily routines. Meanwhile, back on Xylos 7, Jack continued to endure his training, all while secretly observing the weaknesses of the Krill soldiers around him. He noted how predictable their movements were, how reliant they were on technology rather than instinct. Every detail mattered. Every piece of information could be useful later. One night, as the palace grew quiet, Jack found himself sitting in his cramped cell, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with possibilities. Could the resistance really pull off a rescue? And if they did, would he be ready to join their cause? Part of him wanted to believe that humanity still had a chance, but another part feared that trusting anyone again would only lead to disappointment. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. To his surprise, Lily slipped inside, carrying a small device in her hand. "I managed to steal this from the med bay," she whispered, holding it up. It was a data chip. "It contains maps of the palace and security codes. If you can get it to the resistance, maybe they can use it to plan an attack." Jack stared at her, weighing the risks. Taking the chip meant committing fully to the idea of escape and risking severe punishment if he got caught. But staying put meant accepting a life of servitude under Vorthak. Slowly, he reached out and took the chip, slipping it into a hidden pocket in his clothes. "Thank you," he said simply. Lily nodded, her expression grim. "Just promise me one thing. When the time comes, don't leave anyone behind." Jack didn't answer, but the resolve in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. As she slipped out of the room, he clenched his fists, feeling a spark of determination ignite within him. He might be trapped for now, but he wouldn't stay that way forever. The Krill had underestimated him once. They wouldn't get the chance to do it again. Days turned into weeks, and Jack's patience began to pay off. During a routine exercise in the arena, he deliberately sabotaged his rifle, causing it to jam mid-shot. Krall roared in anger, demanding an explanation, but Jack played dumb, claiming the weapon must have been faulty. Later that night, he used the brief moment of chaos during meal distribution to slip the data chip into a ventilation shaft, knowing the Resistance would eventually retrieve it. Unbeknownst to him, Emily and her team had already begun their infiltration mission. Disguised as traders delivering supplies to the palace, they navigated the crowded streets of Xylo 7 with practiced ease. Alex piloted the ship to a hidden docking bay, while Sam hacked into the local network to disable nearby surveillance cameras. Once inside the palace, they followed the maps encoded on the data chip, avoiding patrols and bypassing locked doors with precision timing. When they finally reached Jack's cell, they found him waiting, his rifle slung over his shoulder and a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "Took you long enough," he said dryly as Emily opened the door. "Better late than never," she shot back, extending a hand. "Welcome to the Phoenix, Jack." For the first time in months, Jack felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be dangerous, and the odds were stacked against them. But together they stood a fighting chance. As they made their way back to the ship, dodging alarms and fending off Krill guards, Jack allowed himself a small smile. The fight wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. The escape from Xylo 7 was nothing short of chaos. Jack Monroe moved quickly, his body instinctively falling into the rhythm of combat as he followed Emily Dawson and her crew through the labyrinthine corridors of Vorthak's palace. Behind them, alarms blared like angry beasts, their shrill cries echoing off the black glass walls. Krill soldiers poured into the halls, their glowing eyes scanning for intruders. Laser fire zipped past Jack's head, forcing him to duck behind a fallen pillar. "Stay low," Emily shouted over the noise, her voice calm but urgent. She fired a few well-placed shots from her pistol, taking down 2 Krill guards who had rounded a corner too eagerly. Alex Carter, the pilot, covered the rear, laying down suppressive fire with a compact rifle, while Sam Rodriguez hacked into a nearby security panel to seal a heavy door behind them. Jack didn't waste time marveling at how smoothly the team worked together. Instead, he focused on survival. His rifle, though damaged during his sabotage act in the arena, still functioned well enough to take out enemies at medium range. He picked off 3 more Krill soldiers before they could react, his aim as precise as ever. Each shot felt like a small victory, a reminder that he wasn't powerless anymore. Lily Bennett trailed close behind, clutching her medical kit tightly. Though she hadn't been part of the original plan, she insisted on coming along after helping Jack smuggle the data chip to the Resistance. "I'm not staying behind," she had said firmly when Emily questioned her decision. Now, as they sprinted through the palace, dodging laser blasts and leaping over debris, Lily proved herself useful by patching up minor injuries on the fly. When Alex took a glancing hit to his shoulder, she pressed a med patch against the wound without breaking stride. Finally, they reached the docking bay where the Phoenix waited. The ship looked unassuming compared to the sleek cruisers parked nearby, its hull scarred from countless battles. But it was fast, and right now, speed was all that mattered. As the group piled inside, Sam rushed to the engine room to prep for launch while Alex slid into the pilot's seat. Emily stayed near the hatch, keeping watch until everyone was safely aboard. "Let's go," she yelled once Jack pulled the lever to seal the door. Alex didn't need to be told twice. With a roar of engines, the Phoenix shot out of the bay, narrowly avoiding a volley of plasma cannons from the Krill defense grid. Outside, the crimson skies of Xylo 7 gave way to the cold vastness of space. For several tense minutes, the crew held their breath as Alex maneuvered the ship through a swarm of enemy fighters. Jack joined him in the cockpit, using his sharp eyes to spot incoming threats. 2 bogeys at your 6 o'clock, he called out, pointing to the radar screen. Alex banked hard to starboard, sending the pursuing ships spiraling off course. A few precise blasts from the ship's turrets finished them off. When they finally broke free of Xylo 7's orbit and entered the safety of an asteroid field, the tension aboard the Phoenix began to ease. Everyone let out sighs of relief, slumping into their seats or leaning against walls. For Jack, however, the moment was bittersweet. Freedom tasted sweet, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his shoulders. Back in the main cabin, Emily introduced herself properly to Jack. "I'm Emily Dawson," she said, extending a hand. "Leader of this ragtag bunch." Jack shook it firmly. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Not many people would risk their necks to save someone like me." Emily smirked. "We don't have the luxury of turning down legends, even if they're stubborn ones." Despite the light tone, Jack could see the seriousness in her eyes. This wasn't just about rescuing him, it was about reclaiming humanity's dignity. Over the next few hours, Emily explained the mission of the Phoenix: to strike back against the Krill Dominion wherever possible, weakening their forces until humanity could rise again. They weren't just fighting for freedom, they were fighting for revenge. Jack listened intently, weighing every word. He had spent months believing that humanity was too broken to fight back. Seeing the determination in Emily and her crew made him reconsider. Maybe there was still hope. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that trusting others came with risks. "What's my role in all this?" he asked finally. Emily leaned forward, her expression serious. "We need someone who can hit targets no one else can. Someone who can cripple the Krill's operations from the inside out. That's you, Jack. You're our ace in the hole." Jack nodded slowly. It wasn't the first time someone had placed their faith in him, but it might be the last chance he'd get to prove himself. "All right," he said. "But I work alone. No babysitting." Emily raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "Fair enough, just don't screw us over." Over the following weeks, Jack settled into life aboard the Phoenix. It wasn't easy. Years of captivity had left him wary of forming attachments. Yet, despite his initial reluctance, he found himself growing closer to the crew. Lily, in particular, became a frequent companion. Her fiery spirit reminded him of why he fought in the first place. Not just for survival, but for people like her. People who refused to give up, no matter how dire things seemed. Together, Jack and Lily began planning missions, using intel gathered. From the data chip she had smuggled out of the palace, they identified weak points in the Krill supply lines. These convoys carried vital resources, weapons, fuel, food, that kept the Dominion's war machine running. If they could disrupt those shipments, it would deal a significant blow to the Empire. Their first target was a convoy traveling through a remote sector known as the Veil Nebula. Thick clouds of gas obscured visibility, making it a perfect ambush point. Jack volunteered to lead the operation, insisting that stealth was key. "If we go in guns blazing, they'll call for reinforcements," he explained during the briefing. "We hit them quietly, take out the critical targets, and vanish before they know what hit them." Emily agreed, assigning Alex and Sam to provide support from the Phoenix while she and Lily accompanied Jack on the ground. The team loaded into a small shuttle and dropped onto the surface of a barren moon near the convoy's route. Dressed in camouflage suits designed to blend with the rocky terrain, they set up position overlooking the narrow canyon where the convoy would pass. Hours ticked by as they waited. Finally, the rumble of engines signaled the approach of the Krill vehicles. Jack peered through his scope, counting 5 large transports flanked by smaller escort ships. "Focus on the middle one," he whispered into his comm unit. "It's carrying fuel cells. Take it out and the rest will scramble." With practiced precision, Jack lined up his shot. His finger hovered over the trigger as the convoy entered the kill zone. Then, with a soft exhale, he squeezed. The fuel tank exploded in a brilliant fireball, engulfing the surrounding vehicles in flames. Chaos erupted as Krill soldiers scrambled to respond, but Jack and his team were already moving, slipping away into the shadows. From above, the Phoenix provided cover, blasting any remaining ships that tried to pursue. By the time the dust settled, the convoy was nothing more than smoldering wreckage. Back aboard the ship, the crew celebrated their success. For the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of purpose, not just as a soldier but as part of something bigger. Word of the attack spread quickly through the Krill Dominion. Commanders scrambled to reinforce their supply lines, diverting resources from other sectors. Meanwhile, rumors of a human sniper wreaking havoc on their operations began to circulate. Some dismissed it as propaganda, but others whispered fearfully about the ghost returning to haunt them. On the Phoenix, Emily used the momentum to rally more humans to their cause. Every successful mission strengthened the resistance, drawing in new recruits eager to fight back. Jack became a symbol of defiance, a reminder that even the most oppressed could rise up and strike back. Yet, amidst the victories, Jack remained cautious. He knew the Krill wouldn't stay quiet for long. Retaliation was inevitable, and when it came, he intended to be ready. The resistance grew stronger with each passing day. News of Jack Monroe's exploits spread like wildfire among the human population, inspiring hope in those who had long given up on freedom. On the Phoenix, the mood was electric. Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to organize new recruits, turning scattered survivors into a cohesive fighting force. Alex Carter and Sam Rodriguez spent hours upgrading weapons and repairing equipment, ensuring the ship was ready for whatever came next. Even Lily Bennett found her place, using her knowledge of alien biology to develop treatments for injuries caused by Krill weapons. Jack, however, remained focused. While he appreciated the camaraderie aboard the ship, he knew better than to let his guard down. The Krill Dominion wasn't going to sit idly by while their supply lines were disrupted and their troops picked off one by one. Retaliation was inevitable, and when it came, it would be brutal. Emily called a meeting in the ship's main cabin to discuss their next move. "We've hit them hard," she began, pacing back and forth as the others listened intently. "But we can't keep playing defense. It's time to take the fight directly to the Krill." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You mean attack one of their planets? That's suicide." "No," Emily replied firmly. "Not a planet. A command center. If we destroy one of their key hubs, we'll cripple their ability to coordinate attacks across this sector." Sam leaned forward, tapping a map displayed on the wall screen. "There's a major communications relay on Lithos 5. It controls all traffic in this region. Take that out, and you cut off their chain of command." Lily frowned. "But Lithos 5 is heavily guarded. How do we even get close?" "That's where Jack comes in," Emily said, turning to him. "We need someone who can infiltrate the base, undetected, and disable the core systems. Once that's done, we hit them with everything we've got." Jack didn't hesitate. "I'm in." The journey to Lithos 5 took several days, giving the crew time to prepare. Jack spent hours studying blueprints of the base, memorizing every corridor and security checkpoint. Lily helped him modify his rifle, adding silencers and advanced targeting modules. Meanwhile, Alex and Sam prepped the Phoenix for combat, loading extra ammunition and reinforcing the shields. When they arrived, the sight of Lithos 5 was daunting. The planet was covered in sprawling industrial complexes, their metallic surfaces gleaming under artificial lights. At the heart of it all stood the communications relay, a towering structure bristling with antennas and protected by layers of defenses. Getting inside wouldn't be easy, but Jack had faced worse odds before. Under cover of darkness, the team landed on a remote section of the planet's surface. Dressed in stealth suits designed to reflect minimal heat, they moved silently toward the base. Jack led the way, his movements precise and deliberate. Behind him, Emily and Lily carried explosives, while Alex and Sam stayed behind to monitor the perimeter and provide backup if needed. As they approached the outer fence, Jack spotted a group of Krill guards patrolling nearby. He signaled for the others to hold position, then crept closer. With a single shot, he took out the lead guard, his body crumpling silently to the ground. The others turned in confusion, giving Jack just enough time to eliminate them as well. Within moments, the path was clear. Inside the base, the air was thick with tension. Alarms blared intermittently, though the noise seemed distant compared to the oppressive silence of the corridors. Jack guided the team through narrow passageways, avoiding cameras and automated turrets. When they reached the central control room, Emily set to work planting charges around the core system. Lily assisted her, double-checking each connection to ensure maximum damage. Jack kept watch at the door, his rifle trained on the hallway. Time seemed to slow as minutes ticked by. Finally, Emily gave the signal. "It's done. Let's move." They retraced their steps quickly, heading for the extraction point. But as they neared the exit, the sound of boots pounding against metal echoed through the halls. Reinforcements had arrived. "Go!" Jack shouted, motioning for the others to keep moving. He planted himself at the intersection, taking aim at the approaching soldiers. One by one, they fell, but more kept coming. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, forcing Jack to duck and weave between cover points. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a deafening explosion rocked the base. The charges Emily had planted detonated, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. Lights flickered and died, plunging the corridors into darkness. In the chaos, Jack sprinted after the others, catching up just as they reached the shuttle. "We've got company," Alex yelled from the cockpit as enemy ships closed in overhead. Without waiting for confirmation, he gunned the engines, lifting off just as laser fire erupted around them. Back aboard the Phoenix, Sam coordinated evasive maneuvers, weaving through asteroid fields to lose their pursuers. When they finally emerged into open space, the crew erupted into cheers. The mission had been a success. The communications relay was destroyed, leaving the Krill forces in disarray. For the first time in decades, humanity had struck a decisive blow against its oppressors. In the aftermath of the attack, the resistance gained momentum. Word of the victory spread rapidly, drawing more volunteers to the cause. Entire colonies rose up in rebellion, refusing to bow to Krill rule any longer. Jack became a symbol of defiance, his name whispered with reverence among the oppressed. Yet, despite the progress, Jack remained grounded. He knew the war was far from over. The Krill Dominion still held countless worlds under its thumb, and their leaders wouldn't forgive such a humiliating defeat. Vengeance would come, and when it did, Jack intended to be ready. One evening, as the crew gathered in the mess hall to celebrate their latest triumph, Emily approached Jack. "We're making history," she said, handing him a cup of coffee. "But I want to hear your thoughts. Where do we go from here?" Jack sipped the drink thoughtfully. "We keep hitting them where it hurts. Cut off their resources, target their leaders, make them bleed until they can't stand anymore." Emily nodded. "And what about you? What drives you to keep fighting?" For a moment, Jack hesitated. Then he looked her straight in the eye. "Freedom isn't something you ask for, it's something you take. I won't stop until every human being has the chance to live without chains." His words resonated deeply with everyone present. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for a future worth living for. And with Jack Monroe leading the charge, the Krill Dominion would soon learn that humanity wasn't so easily broken. The stage was set for the final act. The rebellion had grown from scattered acts of defiance into a full-blown uprising. Alliances were forged, strategies refined, and sacrifices made. But the greatest battle still lay ahead. As the Phoenix charted a course toward the heart of the Krill Empire, Jack felt a familiar sense of purpose settle over him. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming humanity's rightful place among the stars. Whatever happened next, he would face it head-on. The Resistance's momentum reached a fever pitch. With the destruction of the Lithos 5 communications relay, the Krill Dominion's grip on its territories began to falter. Entire sectors descended into chaos as supply lines collapsed and orders from Central Command went unanswered. Human colonies seized the opportunity to rise up, toppling local governors and driving out Krill forces. The rebellion was no longer just a whisper. It was a roar. On the Phoenix, Jack Monroe stood at the center of it all. His reputation had grown beyond what anyone could have imagined. To some, he was a ghost haunting the Empire's nightmares. To others, he was a symbol of hope, a man who refused to bow even when all seemed lost. But Jack didn't care about titles or legends. What mattered to him was results. Every mission, every shot fired, brought humanity one step closer to freedom. Emily Dawson called another meeting in the main cabin to discuss their next target. "We've weakened them," she said, her voice steady but charged with determination. "But they still have one major advantage: leadership. As long as Vorthak and his council are in power, the Krill will keep coming back stronger." Jack nodded. He'd been thinking the same thing. Vorthak wasn't just any noble. He was the face of the Dominion's cruelty. His wealth funded their wars. His influence kept their armies loyal, and his ruthlessness ensured obedience. Taking him down wouldn't just cripple the Krill. It would inspire millions more to join the fight. "We go after Vorthak," Jack said simply. "Take him out and the rest of the nobles will turn on each other," Emily agreed. "It won't be easy. Xylo 7 is still heavily guarded, and Vorthak doesn't leave his palace unless absolutely necessary." "Then we make him come out," Alex Carter suggested. "Set a trap, draw him into the open." Sam Rodriguez leaned forward, tapping furiously at his console. "There's an annual gathering of Krill nobles happening soon on Xylo 7. It's a chance for them to show off their wealth and power. If we crash the party, Vorthak won't stay hidden." Lily Bennett spoke up, her fiery red hair catching the light as she turned to face the group. "And if we can get inside the palace during the event, we'll have access to areas that are usually sealed off. We could take out key targets while causing maximum disruption." Emily smiled grimly. "Sounds like a plan. Let's make sure Vorthak remembers this day for the rest of his short life." Preparations for the mission were intense. The crew worked around the clock, modifying weapons, forging disguises, and mapping out every detail of the palace. Jack spent hours studying footage of previous gatherings, noting patterns in security deployments and identifying weak points in the structure. Lily assisted him, using her medical expertise to develop sedatives that could temporarily incapacitate Krill guards without killing them. A small gesture of humanity in an otherwise brutal conflict. As the day of the operation approached, tension aboard the Phoenix grew palpable. Everyone knew the stakes. This wasn't just another raid. It was a declaration of war against the heart of the Krill Dominion itself. When they arrived at Xylo 7, the planet looked eerily familiar to Jack. The crimson skies and jagged spires brought back memories of his captivity. But there was no time for reflection now. Dressed in formal attire designed to mimic wealthy traders, the team blended seamlessly into the crowd of aliens arriving for the gala. Emily carried forged invitations, while Alex and Sam posed as bodyguards. Jack and Lily stayed close, their roles as servants allowing them to move freely through restricted areas. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was opulent and suffocating. Glittering chandeliers hung from ceilings 20 meters high, casting prismatic light across polished black floors. Krill nobles mingled beneath towering statues of their ancestors, their laughter echoing through the vast halls. Servants scurried about carrying trays of exotic foods and drinks. Amid the splendor, Jack felt a pang of disgust. These creatures lived in luxury while billions suffered under their rule. Using Lily's intel, the team split up to cover different parts of the palace. Jack headed toward the upper levels where Vorthak's private chambers were located. Along the way, he encountered several guards, but his training kicked in effortlessly. A silenced pistol took care of 2 patrolling soldiers, while a well-placed sedative dart neutralized a third. By the time he reached Vorthak's suite, the corridor was eerily quiet. He slipped inside, finding the room empty except for a massive desk and holographic displays flickering faintly. Jack moved quickly, planting explosives near critical systems and disabling security feeds. Just as he finished, a deep voice startled him. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Jack spun around to see Vorthak standing in the doorway, flanked by 4 elite guards. The Krill noble's golden eyes gleamed with malice as he stepped closer. "You're resourceful, human. I'll give you that. But you're also predictable." For a moment, Jack considered fighting his way out. But outnumbered and cornered, he knew survival depended on playing along. For now. "Predictable," he replied, his tone calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "I'm full of surprises." Vorthak chuckled darkly. "Not tonight, you aren't. Guards, take him alive. I want to see how long he lasts in my arena." Before the guards could act, a sudden explosion rocked the palace. Lights flickered, plunging the room into semi-darkness. In the confusion, Jack lunged forward, grabbing a fallen guard's weapon and firing blindly. The shots hit their mark, scattering Vorthak's entourage. Jack bolted for the nearest exit, dodging laser blasts as alarms blared throughout the building. Outside, chaos reigned. Explosions lit up the night sky as Emily and the others executed their part of the plan. Fireworks disguised as decorative displays erupted prematurely, sending panicked guests fleeing in all directions. Amid the commotion, Jack spotted Lily signaling to him from a side entrance. Together, they sprinted toward the extraction point, where Alex waited with a shuttle. Vorthak emerged onto a balcony overlooking the scene, his expression twisted with fury. "You won't escape me," he roared, raising a handheld weapon and firing wildly. One shot grazed Jack's arm, but he ignored the pain, pushing himself harder than ever before. Finally, they reached the shuttle. Alex gunned the engines as soon as they were aboard, lifting off just as reinforcements arrived. From above, the Phoenix provided covering fire, blasting enemy ships out of the sky. Back aboard the ship, the crew regrouped, breathing heavily but triumphant. Though Vorthak survived the attack, the damage was done. His reputation had taken a severe blow, and rumors of his vulnerability spread quickly among the nobility. Factions within the Krill Council began turning on each other, vying for control in the wake of the rebellion's audacious strike. For Jack and his allies, the victory was bittersweet. They had struck a devastating blow against the Empire, but the war was far from over. Still, as the Phoenix sailed away from Xylo 7, Jack allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. Vorthak might still be alive, but the seeds of doubt had been planted, and in time those seeds would grow into something unstoppable. "We did good," Emily said, clapping Jack on the shoulder. "But don't get too comfortable. There's still work to do." Jack nodded, his piercing blue eyes fixed on the stars ahead. "Yeah," he said quietly, "and we're not stopping until it's done." The rebellion's final push began with a spark that quickly grew into an inferno. The attack on Xylo 7 had shattered the Krill Dominion's illusion of invincibility. Vorthak, once feared as one of the most powerful nobles in the Empire, was now seen as weak and vulnerable. His failure to stop the humans had emboldened not only the resistance but also rival factions within the Krill Council. Infighting erupted across the Empire as alliances crumbled and power struggles intensified. On the Phoenix, Jack Monroe felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The crew looked to him for guidance, trusting his instincts to lead them through the chaos. Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to coordinate attacks across multiple fronts, while Alex Carter and Sam Rodriguez kept the ship running smoothly despite constant wear and tear. Lily Bennett remained by Jack's side, her fiery determination unwavering even in the face of overwhelming odds. "We've got them on the ropes," Emily said during a strategy meeting in the main cabin. "But we can't let up now. If we strike at their central command hub, we can end this war once and for all." Jack nodded, studying the holographic map projected onto the table. Their capital world, Zorath Prime, is heavily fortified. "Breaking through won't be easy." "We'll use everything we've learned so far," Emily replied. "Hit-and-run tactics, sabotage, and precision strikes. We'll make them fight on our terms." Alex leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "And what happens if we fail? They'll come after us with everything they've got." Sam adjusted his glasses, his voice calm but firm. "Then we go down swinging. This isn't just about winning, it's about showing them we're not afraid anymore." Lily added softly, "It's about making sure no human ever has to live in chains again." Jack met each of their gazes, feeling a surge of pride. These people weren't just comrades, they were family. Together, they had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. Whatever lay ahead, he knew they would face it together. The journey to Zorath Prime took weeks, giving the crew time to prepare. Jack spent hours honing his skills, practicing shots under simulated battlefield conditions. Lily helped him modify his rifle further, adding enhancements that increased its range and accuracy. Meanwhile, Alex and Sam worked on upgrading the Phoenix weapon systems, ensuring the ship could hold its own against the Krill fleet. When they arrived, the sight of Zorath Prime was daunting. The planet was surrounded by layers of orbital defenses, massive battle stations bristling with cannons, swarms of fighter drones, and countless warships patrolling the skies. At the center of it all stood the Citadel, a towering fortress that housed the Krill High Council. It was the heart of the Empire, and the key to its downfall. Emily outlined the plan, a two-pronged assault. While Jack led a ground team to infiltrate the Citadel and disable its core systems, the Phoenix would engage the orbital defenses, drawing enemy forces away from the surface. Timing was critical. If the ground team failed, the entire mission would collapse. Under cover of darkness, the team landed on the outskirts of the Citadel. Dressed in stealth suits designed to blend with the terrain, they moved silently toward their objective. Jack led the way, his movements precise and deliberate. Behind him, Emily and Lily carried explosives, while Alex and Sam provided covering fire. As they approached the outer perimeter, Jack spotted a group of Krill guards stationed near the main gate. He signaled for the others to hold position, then crept closer. With a single shot, he took out the lead guard, his body crumpling silently to the ground. The others turned in confusion, giving Jack just enough time to eliminate them as well. Within moments, the path was clear. Inside the Citadel, the air was thick with tension. Alarms blared intermittently, though the noise seemed distant compared to the oppressive silence of the corridors. Jack guided the team through narrow passageways, avoiding cameras and automated turrets. When they reached the central control room, Emily set to work planting charges around the core system. Lily assisted her, double-checking each connection to ensure maximum damage. Jack kept watch at the door, his rifle trained on the hallway. Time seemed to slow as minutes ticked by. Finally, Emily gave the signal. "It's done. Let's move." They retraced their steps quickly, heading for the extraction point. But as they neared the exit, the sound of boots pounding against metal echoed through the halls. Reinforcements had arrived. "Go!" Jack shouted, motioning for the others to keep moving. He planted himself at the intersection, taking aim at the approaching soldiers. One by one, they fell, but more kept coming. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, forcing Jack to duck and weave between cover points. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a deafening explosion rocked the Citadel. The charges Emily had planted detonated, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. Lights flickered and died, plunging the corridors into darkness. In the chaos, Jack sprinted after the others, catching up just as they reached the shuttle. "We've got company," Alex yelled from the cockpit as enemy ships closed in overhead. Without waiting for confirmation, he gunned the engines, lifting off just as laser fire erupted around them. Back aboard the Phoenix, Sam coordinated evasive maneuvers, weaving through asteroid fields to lose their pursuers. The destruction of the Citadel marked the beginning of the end for the Krill Dominion. Without central leadership, the Empire fractured into warring factions, each vying for control. Human colonies seized the opportunity to rise up, driving out remaining Krill forces and reclaiming their worlds. The rebellion had become a revolution, sweeping across the galaxy like wildfire. For Jack and his crew, the victory was bittersweet. Countless lives had been lost in the struggle for freedom, and the scars of war would take generations to heal. But for the first time in decades, humanity stood tall, united by a shared dream of peace and prosperity. In the aftermath, Emily proposed a bold idea, using the Phoenix as a symbol of hope, traveling from world to world to help rebuild what had been destroyed. "We started this fight together," she said during a final meeting in the main cabin. "Let's finish it the same way." Jack nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. Sounds like a plan. As the ship charted a course toward the stars, Jack reflected on how far they had come. From a broken slave standing on an auction block to a leader of a galactic uprising, he had fought for every step of the journey. And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, he knew one thing for certain: humanity's spirit could never be extinguished. Together, the crew of the Phoenix sailed into the unknown, carrying with them the promise of a brighter future. For Jack Monroe, the sniper who refused to give up, the fight was over, but the legacy of his courage would endure forever.